Single billionaire found a little girl alone in the park. When he took her home, the door opened and he froze. What if the love of your life wasn't someone you met in a ballroom or on a yacht, but instead waiting for you in the form of a terrified child sitting alone on a park bench? That thought wouldn't have crossed Nathaniel Carter's mind in a million years. Billionaires didn't stumble into destiny in city parks. They found business partners at board meetings, love interests at charity galas, and scandals in the press. But tonight, his life veered off its well-scripted path. Nathaniel was the kind of man headlines called the most eligible bachelor in Manhattan. Tall, sharp-jawed, broad-shouldered, the kind of man whose gaze made entire boardrooms fall silent. His empire stretched across luxury hotels, private aviation, and even tech startups. The man had it all except love. He'd never let anyone close enough. Business was safe. Emotions weren't. But under the cloak of his tailored life, he was restless. Loneliness wasn't the kind of thing you could drown in million-dollar wine or cover with the flash of cameras. Tonight, on an evening when the city lights burned like restless stars, he left his chauffeured car behind and chose to walk through the park. Something about the chill in the September air felt grounding. That's when he saw her. A tiny figure no older than 6 or 7 sitting on a wooden bench. No jacket, her little knees pressed to her chest, messy brown hair falling over her face, and most of all those eyes, big, wide, shimmering with tears yet silent. She clutched a stuffed bunny like it was the only friend she had left in the world. Nathaniel stopped in his tracks. He didn't have children. He barely had time for adults unless they were signing contracts, but something about the fragile sight of her cracked him open in ways he couldn't explain. "Hey," he said softly, approaching, his voice, usually stern and commanding, turned unexpectedly gentle. "Are you okay?" The girl shook her head, not a word. He crouched down so he wasn't towering above her. "Where's your mom or your dad?" A whisper barely audible, "Gone." The word struck Nathaniel harder than any business loss he had ever suffered. He felt his chest tighten. The night air seemed colder now, sharper. "Gone," he repeated carefully. "Do you mean they left you here?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. She hugged the bunny tighter and said nothing. Nathaniel glanced around the park. Empty. Just the echo of footsteps in the distance, the rustle of trees, no frantic parent, no searching guardian, just this little girl abandoned in the middle of a sleepless city. For the first time in years, Nathaniel didn't think, he felt. "You can't stay here," he murmured. "Come on, I'll take you somewhere safe." The girl hesitated, her tiny hand tightening around the bunny. Nathaniel extended his hand. His life had been built on deals, contracts, and signatures. But this, the smallest hand slipping into his, felt like the most important agreement he had ever made. The drive back to his penthouse was silent. The chauffeur raised an eyebrow when Nathaniel entered the car with a child in tow but said nothing. Billionaires did strange things, it wasn't his place to ask. Nathaniel glanced at the girl in the seat beside him. She stared out the tinted window, her lips pressed together like if she spoke too much, the world might fall apart again. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She blinked hesitant. "Emma." He smiled faintly. "Emma, that's a beautiful name." Her eyes flicked toward him, studying him carefully like she was trying to decide if he was trustworthy. For reasons he couldn't explain, he wanted desperately to prove to her that he was. When the car pulled up outside his penthouse, Nathaniel felt an unusual nervousness. The glass tower loomed high, an empire of steel and light. But what would a child think of all this? Would she feel safe or even more lost? Inside, he guided her gently. "You must be hungry," he said. "Do you like pancakes or maybe hot chocolate?" Emma's small voice barely broke the silence. "Hot chocolate." He exhaled, relieved at the sound of something other than silence from her. He made a mental note to call his housekeeper in the morning. For now, he rolled up his sleeves, finding himself in front of a kitchen counter he rarely used. Billionaires didn't cook, but tonight Nathaniel Carter did, for Emma. Her eyes followed him as he moved about clumsily. When he placed the steaming mug in front of her, she wrapped her hands around it like it was a lifeline. And then she spoke again. "My mommy makes it with marshmallows." Nathaniel froze. That word, mommy, so she wasn't an orphan after all. His mind spun with questions. Where was this mother? Why was Emma alone? He crouched again, lowering his voice. "Emma, do you know where your mommy is?" She looked down into the cup, her voice trembling. She was crying, then she told me to wait, she didn't come back. Nathaniel's gut twisted. 1,000 possibilities ran through his head, none of them good. But before he could press further, the sound of the elevator echoed through the penthouse. A ding, footsteps. Nathaniel's entire body stiffened. He wasn't expecting anyone tonight. Nobody had access here except his staff and... The door opened. And that's when Nathaniel froze. Standing in the doorway was a woman, her hair damp with the mist of the evening rain, her eyes wide, brimming with desperation and relief all at once. She looked like she had run miles, her breath uneven, her face flushed. "Emma," the woman cried, rushing forward. The girl bolted from the chair, spilling hot chocolate across the counter, but she didn't care. She ran straight into the woman's arms, clutching her like she'd been rescued from drowning. Nathaniel stood frozen in place. His chest tightened, not just from the shock of the moment but from the woman herself. She wasn't what he expected. She wasn't some careless stranger. She was breathtaking. Her beauty wasn't polished or artificial. It was raw, desperate, real. Her eyes held oceans of emotion, her lips trembled with unspoken apologies as she kissed Emma's hair again and again. And then she looked up at him. Nathaniel had closed billion-dollar deals, faced ruthless competitors, and held entire empires in his hands. But nothing had ever shaken him like the way her eyes locked onto his. He wanted to demand answers. Who was she? Why had Emma been left alone in the park? Why had fate dragged him into this? But all he managed to whisper was one stunned word. "You." The woman blinked, her arms tightening protectively around Emma. Her voice cracked as she answered. "I'm her mother." The silence after her words could have swallowed the entire room. "I'm her mother." Nathaniel's breath caught, his throat dry, as though the world had tilted slightly off its axis. Emma clung to the woman's neck, burying her face into her shoulder. The woman's chest rose and fell rapidly, the rhythm of someone who had been running, not just from the rain outside but from something bigger, something unseen. Nathaniel had seen countless faces across boardrooms and charity galas, but never one like hers. She wasn't dressed for glamour, her blouse was crumpled, shoes scuffed, hair damp, but her presence held an intensity he couldn't ignore. "Her mother," he repeated, almost disbelieving. His voice, usually calm and commanding, cracked faintly. The woman nodded, pulling Emma tighter into her embrace. "Yes, I didn't mean to," her words faltered. She turned away as if ashamed. Nathaniel's mind spun. He wasn't a man used to loose ends or unanswered questions, and right now there were too many. "You left her in the park," he said, his voice sharper than he intended. The woman flinched, her arms instinctively tightening around Emma. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand," Nathaniel cut in, his eyes narrowing, though something in his chest protested against being harsh with her. Emma peeked at him from her mother's shoulder, her small eyes fearful, as though the man who had saved her was suddenly a stranger. Nathaniel's heart sank. He didn't want to be the villain in this child's eyes, not after she had trusted him. The woman swallowed hard, her lips trembling as she began. "My name is Claire Bennett. I didn't abandon her. I was looking for help." "Help?" Nathaniel echoed. Claire nodded, her gaze darting toward Emma, then back to him. "Things aren't safe for us, not right now." The words lingered in the air, heavy, loaded. Nathaniel was a man who read between lines for a living, and every instinct told him Claire was running from something, maybe someone. Before he could ask more, Claire's knees buckled slightly. The exhaustion in her face was undeniable. She had pushed herself past her limit. Without thinking, Nathaniel stepped forward. "Sit down," he said, his tone softer now. "You look like you're about to collapse." Claire hesitated, clearly torn between pride and weakness. But Emma tugged gently at her sleeve, whispering, "Mommy, please." With that, Claire let Nathaniel guide her to the couch. She sat carefully, Emma curled tightly at her side, never letting go. Nathaniel poured her a glass of water and handed it over. She accepted with shaky hands, her fingers brushing his for the briefest moment. It shouldn't have mattered, but the spark of contact lingered longer than he expected. "Thank you," Claire whispered. Nathaniel studied her, leaning against the marble counter. His penthouse had never felt so strange, like it was no longer his territory but a stage for something bigger than himself. I don't usually bring strangers into my home, he admitted, especially not in the middle of the night, but Emma, his voice faltered and he looked at the child now dozing against her mother's side. I couldn't leave her there. Claire's eyes softened. You didn't just bring her home, Mr. Carter, you saved her. The gratitude in her tone tugged at something inside him. He wasn't used to being thanked for anything beyond business deals, and yet, for once, this mattered more than any empire he had built. He cleared his throat. You said things aren't safe. What exactly are you running from? Claire's fingers tightened around the empty glass. Her eyes flickered with fear, then resolve. My past. Nathaniel had learned long ago never to push too hard at first. People revealed the truth when they were ready. But one thing was certain, Claire Bennett wasn't just another passerby. She carried a story, one that had left scars deep enough to drive her into the night with her daughter. As the city lights glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Nathaniel found himself caught in an unfamiliar pull. Claire wasn't just beautiful, she was real, fragile yet fierce, vulnerable yet protective. She stirred something he hadn't felt in years. And that terrified him. Because Nathaniel Carter didn't do attachments. But as Emma's tiny hand slipped from her mother's sleeve to rest gently on Nathaniel's arm, her sleepy whisper breaking the quiet, "Don't leave us," something inside him cracked wide open. Claire looked up, startled, her cheeks flushed. Nathaniel froze, the weight of the words sinking in. "Don't leave us." The plea of a child, the echo of a mother's hidden desperation. For the first time in his carefully ordered life, Nathaniel realized this wasn't just a passing encounter. This was the beginning of something he couldn't yet name, but it was powerful enough to shake his world to its core. And as he met Claire's eyes across the dimly lit room, he knew, no matter how much he fought it, this night had changed everything. The city never slept, but Nathaniel's penthouse was unusually silent. Claire sat by the window, Emma asleep on the couch beside her, clutching the stuffed bunny. Nathaniel poured himself a glass of bourbon, but his eyes never left Claire. "You owe me the truth," he finally said, his voice low. Claire's posture stiffened. She kept her gaze on the skyline as if the glittering city lights could shield her from his questions. "The truth isn't simple." "Then start with the part that matters most," Nathaniel replied. She turned, her expression torn between fear and determination. Emma's father. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. Claire exhaled shakily. "I thought he was charming when we met, successful. He promised stability, love, a future, but behind closed doors he was controlling, dangerous. At first it was words, then it became more." Nathaniel felt his grip tighten around the glass. He'd spent years outmaneuvering ruthless businessmen, but the thought of anyone laying a hand on her or frightening Emma ignited a fury he wasn't used to. "So you left him," he said. Claire nodded. 2 years ago, but he never let go. He wants Emma not because he loves her but because she's his possession. I've had to move cities, change jobs, hide. Tonight I thought he was following us again. I panicked. I told Emma to wait while I checked. When I came back she was gone." Her voice cracked. "And for a moment I thought I'd lost her forever." Silence stretched between them. Nathaniel set his glass down and crossed the room, kneeling so he was eye level with her. "You're safe here, both of you. Nobody touches you under my roof." Claire's lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but the fire in his tone silenced her. He wasn't boasting, he was promising, and she believed him. The following morning, Nathaniel's penthouse looked different. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching in Emma's laughter as she ate pancakes at the marble counter. Nathaniel, who had never spent a morning cooking for anyone, was actually flipping pancakes in his designer kitchen. "You're doing it wrong," Emma giggled. "Oh really?" Nathaniel arched a brow, smirking. "And you're the expert." Emma nodded proudly. "Mommy makes them fluffy, yours look like pizza." Nathaniel chuckled, a sound Claire realized she'd never heard from him before. It was unguarded, warm, utterly disarming. Claire watched from the side, her heart betraying her. She promised herself she wouldn't let any man near her heart again. But watching Nathaniel, this billionaire who could have dismissed them both, standing barefoot in his kitchen, listening patiently to a little girl critique his cooking, it chipped at her walls. She caught his gaze across the room. For a heartbeat the world stilled. Then Emma interrupted, holding up her fork. "Mr. Carter, can we stay here forever?" The innocence of the question struck them both like lightning. Claire's cheeks flushed, Nathaniel's chest tightened. He crouched beside Emma. Tell you what, as long as you're here, this is your home, deal. Emma grinned, nodding, before diving into another pancake. But Claire knew the truth. This was temporary. She couldn't let her daughter dream of forever, not when danger lurked in the shadows of their past. Later that day, Nathaniel received a call from his assistant. He excused himself, stepping into his office. But Claire could hear snippets of his voice, sharp, commanding, very different from the gentle man Emma adored. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. "What is it?" Claire asked softly. He hesitated, then said, "Your ex, he's in New York." Claire's face was drained of color. Her hand instinctively reached for Emma, who was busy drawing at the counter. "He's looking for you," Nathaniel continued, "and he's not alone." Claire's chest tightened, the fragile safety she felt shattered in an instant. But Nathaniel wasn't finished. He stepped closer, his voice steady, resolute. "Then let him look. He'll never touch you or Emma, not while I'm here." Claire met his eyes, searching for cracks, for empty promises, but all she found was iron, a man who didn't bluff, a man who had power, resources, and for reasons she couldn't understand yet had chosen to stand with them. Her throat tightened. "Why are you doing this for us?" Nathaniel's gaze softened. He looked at Emma, then back at Claire. His answer was simple, almost whispered. "Because you matter." The words hit harder than she expected. For 2 years she had been running, invisible, forgotten, defined only as someone's victim. But in Nathaniel's eyes, for the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she mattered. And that realization stirred something dangerous, something she had buried deep: hope. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Claire stepped out onto the balcony. The city glowed beneath them, restless and alive. Nathaniel joined her, standing just close enough that she felt his presence. "You should know," she said softly. "I didn't want to trust you, I couldn't, but you've done more for Emma in one night than her father ever has." Nathaniel studied her profile, the curve of her jaw, the sadness in her eyes that no smile could hide. "You don't have to thank me, Claire." She turned, her gaze locking with his. "I'm not thanking you, I'm warning you. My life is messy, dangerous, you don't want to be pulled into it." Nathaniel leaned in slightly, his voice firm but quiet. "Maybe I do." Her breath caught, the closeness between them, the intensity in his eyes. It was too much, too soon. She turned away, gripping the railing. But Nathaniel didn't push further. He simply stood beside her, letting the night air fill the silence between them. Because both of them knew the truth. Whatever this was, it was only just beginning. The storm hit faster than anyone expected. 2 nights after Claire and Emma had come into Nathaniel's world, security cameras outside his building picked up a figure lingering too long near the entrance. Nathaniel's head of security called immediately. "Sir, it's the man you asked us to look for." Nathaniel didn't even blink. "Keep eyes on him. If he tries anything, I want him stopped before he reaches the lobby." But inside the penthouse, Claire was restless. She had felt it in her bones all day, a heaviness that wouldn't leave. And when Nathaniel finally told her what security had reported, her worst fears confirmed themselves. "He found us," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes darted to Emma asleep in the guest bedroom, her tiny breath steady and peaceful. Nathaniel caught the panic in her face and stepped closer. "He won't touch her or you." Claire's hands trembled. "You don't understand what he's capable of. Money, power, he knows how to twist everything in his favor. I've been running for years, Nathaniel, he doesn't stop." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, his voice calm but sharp. Then he finally met someone who doesn't run. The next evening, Nathaniel insisted Claire and Emma stay inside. He doubled his security detail, personally overseeing their positions. Claire watched him through the glass walls of his office as he gave crisp orders, every word precise. This wasn't just a businessman, this was a man who commanded loyalty, who could move armies with a single call. For the first time since she'd fled her old life, she felt like she wasn't the only one carrying the burden of keeping Emma safe. When he returned, she was waiting. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "I know protecting us puts you at risk." Nathaniel studied her, then shook his head. "Claire, I've built an empire worth billions, but do you want to know the truth?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "None of it matters as much as keeping you and Emma safe, and I don't even know why yet, but I'm not letting either of you go." The words struck something deep inside her. She wanted to push him away to keep her guard up, but her heart betrayed her. Her eyes shimmered, and before she could stop herself, she whispered, "You'll regret it." Nathaniel's lips curved faintly, though his eyes were serious. "I don't regret things, I fight for them." The air between them shifted. The tension wasn't just fear anymore, it was something more dangerous, something electric. Later that night, Nathaniel found Claire in the kitchen, pouring herself tea with shaky hands. He approached quietly, but she felt him before he spoke. "You haven't slept," he said. "Neither have you," she replied. Their eyes locked. For a moment, words failed, then Claire exhaled, setting the cup down. "Why are you doing this for me, Nathaniel?" she asked. Her voice broke. "You don't even know me." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet steady. "Maybe I don't know all your secrets, but I know what I see." His gaze lingered on her face, then softened. "You're strong, you're brave, you're the kind of woman who protects her child even if it means destroying yourself, and that," his voice dropped, almost a whisper, "that's worth everything." Claire's chest rose and fell sharply. The raw honesty in his words left her defenseless. Slowly, almost against her will, she whispered, "And what about you? Who protects you, Nathaniel?" For the first time, he faltered. His walls cracked just enough for her to glimpse the loneliness he kept buried. "Maybe you," he said quietly. The silence stretched, heavy with something neither of them dared name. Then, without meaning to, Claire's hand brushed his. The contact was brief but enough. The spark between them wasn't imagined, it was real, undeniable, and terrifying. The next day the storm broke. Claire and Emma were in the living room when the intercom buzzed. A voice, unfamiliar but sharp, crackled through. "This is Detective Harris, NYPD. We're here to ask a few questions." Nathaniel's instincts went cold. He hadn't called the police. He checked the cameras and froze. It wasn't the police, it was him. Claire's ex, dressed clean, holding papers, flanked by two men in suits. He had come to the door pretending authority. Nathaniel moved fast, signaling his security to lock down the elevators. "Stay here," he ordered Claire, his voice calm but commanding. But she was already pale, her eyes wide with dread. "It's him." Emma clung to her mother's side, fear clouding her little face. Nathaniel crouched, looking Emma in the eye. "Nothing will happen to you, I promise." Then he straightened, fire burning in his chest. This wasn't just business anymore, this was war. And Nathaniel Carter never lost wars. That night, after the confrontation had been diffused, Nathaniel's security sending Claire's ex away with a warning he wouldn't soon forget. The adrenaline still lingered. Claire sat on the couch, Emma finally asleep upstairs. Her hands shook as she clutched the tea Nathaniel had brought her. "You should have let him take me," she whispered suddenly. Nathaniel's head snapped toward her. "Don't you ever say that again." Tears slid down her cheeks. "He won't stop, Nathaniel. He'll ruin you just to get to us. I can't let you destroy your life because of mine." Nathaniel's chest ached, but his voice was steady. "Claire, look at me." She did. "I don't care what it costs me. I won't let him win, not over you, not over Emma." Her lip trembled, but when he reached out and cupped her face gently, she didn't pull away. The warmth of his hand against her skin was a comfort she hadn't felt in years. "Why me?" she whispered. His eyes softened. "Because you're the first thing in a long time that feels real." And before she could stop herself, before fear could hold her back, Claire leaned forward just enough. Their lips brushed, tentative, fleeting, but charged with every unspoken word between them. When they pulled back, both breathless, the truth was undeniable. This wasn't just protection anymore, it was something far deeper. Something neither of them could walk away from. The kiss haunted them both long after it ended. Nathaniel couldn't shake the softness of her lips, the taste of her breath, the way Claire had trembled against him like she wanted to let go but was still afraid. He had kissed women before, models, socialites, actresses, but this wasn't the same. This wasn't desire for the sake of it. This was need. Raw, consuming, undeniable. But morning brought reality crashing back. Nathaniel's phone buzzed before dawn. His assistant's voice was sharp, almost panicked. "Sir, the press has your name linked with Claire Bennett. Articles are already running. Rumors say she's your mistress, others claim she's blackmailing you." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He didn't need to ask where the stories came from. Claire's ex had made his move. By the time Nathaniel stepped into the living room, Claire was packing with a newspaper in hand. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. Emma sat at the counter, confused by the tension. "They're saying things about me," Claire whispered, her voice breaking. "About Emma, Nathaniel, he's destroying you, he's destroying us." Nathaniel crossed the room in 2 strides and took the paper from her. He tossed it aside without looking. "Let him try, I don't scare easily. But your company, your reputation." "Claire," his voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "I've built empires from ashes before, I can rebuild again. What I won't do is let him ruin you, or her." Her lip trembled, her eyes shimmering. "Why?" "Because I care about you," his voice dropped. "More than I should, more than I can explain." The air between them thickened. Claire's breath caught, her hand twitching at her side as if to reach for him, but before she could, Emma tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, don't cry," the little girl whispered. That was all it took for Claire to crumble. She sank to her knees, hugging Emma tight, tears spilling freely. Nathaniel stood behind them, his chest aching. For a man who had everything, he had never felt so powerless. But he made himself a silent vow: he would tear down anyone, anything that dared hurt these two again. That evening, Nathaniel called an emergency meeting at his corporate headquarters. His executives were restless, worried about the headlines. Investors whispered about the scandal, but Nathaniel silenced them with a single statement. "She and her daughter are under my protection. Anyone who has a problem with that can hand in their resignation now." Nobody spoke, nobody moved. They all knew the truth when Nathaniel Carter made a declaration. It wasn't just words, it was the law. Back at the penthouse, Claire waited. When Nathaniel returned, his tie loosened, his expression worn, she approached cautiously. "You shouldn't have to fight my battles," she said softly. Nathaniel looked at her, exhaustion giving way to something sharper. "Maybe I want to." Claire's throat tightened. "You'll lose everything." "I'd rather lose everything than lose you." The confession hung in the air, heavy and breathtaking. Claire froze, her heart hammering. She wanted to argue, to protect him from the wreckage her life had become. But instead, she whispered the truth that had been clawing at her for days. "I don't want to run anymore." Nathaniel stepped closer, closing the space between them. "Then don't stay with me." Her chest rose and fell quickly, her eyes searched his, desperate for reassurance. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do," his voice was steady, filled with conviction. "I'm asking for you, both of you, for as long as you'll let me." Her resolve shattered. Slowly, almost timidly, she reached for his hand. He took it, wrapping his fingers around hers like it was the easiest thing in the world. For the first time since her escape, Claire let herself believe in the possibility of a future, not one dictated by fear but by choice. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Claire and Nathaniel found themselves on the balcony again. The city glittered below, but all Nathaniel saw was her. "You terrify me," Claire admitted suddenly, her voice soft but steady. Nathaniel tilted his head. "Why?" "Because every time I let you in, I feel like I'm giving away pieces of myself I promised I'd never give again. And I'm scared because I don't want to lose you." Nathaniel's chest tightened. He reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "You won't lose me." Their lips met again, this time deeper, fuller, not tentative but claiming. Claire melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt, his arms wrapping around her as though anchoring her to the earth. The kiss was fire and safety, hunger and home, everything they had both been missing. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Nathaniel whispered against her lips, "Let me fight for us." Claire closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek, not of fear this time but of surrender. "Okay," she breathed, "fight for us." And in that moment, Nathaniel knew, whatever storm was coming, they would face it together. The storm came fast. Claire's ex unleashed everything at once: lawsuits claiming custody of Emma, interviews painting Claire as an unstable mother, even private investigators trying to dig into Nathaniel's past. Headlines screamed betrayal, scandal, danger. Paparazzi camped outside the penthouse. Nathaniel, however, didn't flinch. He doubled security, made public statements defending Claire's honor, and hired the best legal team in the country. His empire had weathered hostile takeovers before, this battle would be no different. But what the ex hadn't counted on was Nathaniel's resources or his resolve. In court, the truth came out. Witnesses testified to the ex's abuse, his infidelities, his threats. Photos and recordings which Claire had once been too afraid to use now stood as undeniable proof. When the judge banged the gavel, granting Claire full custody and restraining her ex permanently, the courtroom erupted in gasps. Claire collapsed into Nathaniel's arms, shaking with relief. Emma clapped her small hands, her voice carrying across the hushed room. "Does this mean Mommy's safe now?" Nathaniel kissed the top of her head. "Forever safe, princess." The weeks that followed felt like sunlight breaking through years of storm clouds. Claire no longer looked over her shoulder. Emma laughed freely, no shadows in her eyes. Nathaniel, who had once believed love was a weakness, found himself craving their presence like air. Still, there was one thing he hadn't said, one thing that burned in his chest every night he held Claire close. So he planned it carefully. On a crisp autumn evening, Nathaniel drove them out of the city to a secluded park. It was the same park where he had first found Emma, lost and clutching her doll. Claire's breath caught when she realized, "You brought us back here." Nathaniel smiled softly. "This is where everything changed for me, where I found her and, in a way, where I found you." Before she could answer, Emma darted forward, twirling with her doll. "Mommy, look, it's where Mr. Carter saved me." Nathaniel chuckled, then turned to Claire. His expression grew serious. He dropped to one knee. Claire froze, her hand flying to her mouth. Nathaniel pulled a velvet box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a diamond that caught the fading sunlight like fire. "Claire Bennett," he said, his voice steady, his eyes locked on hers, "you walked into my life when I least expected it and you turned it upside down. You and Emma, you've given me something I never thought I'd deserve: family, love, purpose. I don't want to spend another day without you by my side. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Claire's vision. She shook her head, not in refusal but in disbelief. "Nathaniel, after everything, you still want me?" He rose, taking her hands in his. "Not want, Claire, need. You're not my weakness, you're my strength, both of you." Emma, bouncing with excitement, squealed, "Say yes, Mommy, please, please say yes." Claire's heart gave way. She threw her arms around Nathaniel, sobbing into his chest. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Nathaniel kissed her fiercely, passionately, sealing not just a promise but a future. Emma clapped and spun, declaring loudly to the trees, "We're a family now." The wedding was intimate, held months later in a garden filled with white roses. Claire walked down the aisle holding Emma's hand, her eyes locked on Nathaniel's waiting smile. When they exchanged vows, it wasn't just about love, it was about survival, redemption, and the family they had built from broken pieces. As Nathaniel slid the ring onto her finger, he whispered so only she could hear, "From the moment I found her in that park, my life was never the same, and now, I don't ever want it to be." Claire's tears glistened as she whispered back, "You saved us both, and now we save each other." The kiss that followed was more than husband and wife, it was home found at last. That night, as the stars blanketed the sky, Nathaniel carried Emma, already asleep, into their new home. He returned to the balcony where Claire stood, her gown flowing in the night breeze. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her against him. "Are you happy?" he murmured. She leaned back into him, her smile soft and unguarded. "For the first time in forever, yes." Nathaniel kissed her temple, his gaze drifting to the stars. "Good, because this is only the beginning." Claire turned to face him, her eyes glowing. "Then let's begin together." And in that moment, under the quiet night sky, the billionaire who once lived alone and the woman who had once lived in fear stepped into forever, bound by a little girl, a twist of fate, and a love strong enough to silence every storm.